This past week, all 9 members of the County Council voted to support County Executive Mark Elrich's proposed restrictions, closing down indoor dining and rolling back the capacity requirements in retail stores and religious facilities. Mike, the state of Maryland says that indoor dining at 50% is okay. Anne Arundel County says that occupancy levels in churches is safe at 33%. And here in Montgomery County, they believe that churches' occupancy is safe at 25%, but only for 25 people outdoors. There seems to be a lot of variety in these regulations, and there are those that believe that the county is just guessing on how to slow the spread.
I think given the numbers you just articulated, I think everyone's guessing at how to slow the spread. I don't think anyone has clear structure, clear guidance. I think we don't have real clear guidance necessarily coming from a federal level, and I think that every jurisdiction is trying to come up with some way to anchor what they're doing on some guidance and something they can justify. But I think it really just depends upon where people are and what they're trying to do. I've gone to church a couple times, and honestly, we haven't even met the 25% threshold because people have been concerned putting too many people in a closed place. That being said, we're seeing pictures of places where folks are clearly overcrowding in bars and other social environments. And so I really think it's just a matter of trying to give folks some guidelines and trying to do something that says, here's a structure in which we can operate that makes sense. But I don't know that anybody actually knows what makes the most sense other than wear a mask, wash your hands, and try to not breathe on people and stay some degree of distance apart from each other.
Well, but this may not be as big an issue here, but it's certainly in other areas where you can travel just a few miles to be in a different jurisdiction where there are different requirements. I mean, isn't it seemingly unfair for Montgomery County to have more stringent restrictions than Frederick or Howard? I mean, given the proximity, why isn't the state regulations sufficient?
Well, I think the fairness criteria is hard in either direction, right? Is it unfair for Montgomery County to be more restrictive or unfair for Frederick County to be less restrictive? I mean, I think that each jurisdiction is struggling with what's happening on the ground and trying to respond. And I'm not sure necessarily that, especially in a state like Maryland, where you have Allegheny, Wacomico County, and you've got places that are clearly more populous like Montgomery and Prince George's County, that you can come up with a requirement that's going to fit those very different circumstances.
Well, it seems that those who are calling for national requirements would be happy with one set of standards. So, but let me go on, because Nicolee, Baltimore City, it also announced a ban on indoor dining, as did neighboring Anne Arundel County. And interestingly enough, now a judge has issued a temporary restraining order suspending the ban in Anne Arundel County. And that's a high bar to meet. They don't issue a temporary restraining order unless they believe the litigant is going to win. What's your view on all of this?
I'm proud of the Annapolis restaurant owners who brought forth that lawsuit. I'm very happy that the judge is taking a look at this. I think these bans are arbitrary and capricious. I think they show political and personal bias against picking winners and losers. How on earth is it that you can't get COVID in a Walmart, but you can only get it by going to church? I think this is outrageous. I feel like in the case of Montgomery County, it's been your elected officials literally just jumping off a cliff. They don't have science saying that you'll get it at church, but you won't get it at Walmart. And I think Americans really need to think long and hard, because if government can tell you you're not allowed to go to church, but you are allowed to go to Walmart, what freedoms will they take away next?
Well, you're a Baltimorean, I believe, and you know, your city council is now considering having placing a limit on the fees that can be charged for takeout services. So what is the poor retailer supposed to do if government is telling them they can't stay open for business and now are limiting what they can charge for providing services?
Sure, I'm really concerned that there's not going to be much left of Baltimore City after this pandemic. I don't think the new mayor got off on a good foot by his first order being to basically close down all restaurants. It's one of the only thriving industries Baltimore had left. And I'm just very concerned that there will be literally nothing left here.
I want to go to Mark. Mark, Nicolee mentioned something, and I want to follow up with you on this. The Archdiocese of Washington has sued the District of Columbia over its occupancy restrictions, and those are very similar to Montgomery County. Montgomery County is part of the Archdiocese of the Catholic Archdiocese of Washington. So, are we going to be sued next?
Well, I would assume so, and I think that with very good grounds and with very strong precedent, the courts have already said that if you're treating religious faith-based institutions differently than other, then that's a violation of the First Amendment. Let me just go pick up on something we said earlier before. Look, the CDC has given guidance that says 6 feet, which basically works out to about 36 square feet, 6 by 6, and even if you want to make a little adjustment for an extra foot or two. The standard that Montgomery County and other jurisdictions, but particularly Montgomery, are trying to apply are much more restrictive than that 36 or say 50 square foot. They're talking about 200 and more. And obviously with the churches, when they put a hard cap of percentage without taking into account the size of the institution, completely inappropriate. Let's look at what the science says. Let's look at what CDC says. And CDC provides a far greater level of latitude than is being permitted by Montgomery County.
Well, thank you, Mark. Sam, this is really a hot button issue with me because I worked as a waiter and a bartender through college and law school. And the idea that these restaurants are being shut down really, has me very upset because the politicians who are making these decisions, they're not losing their livelihood. They're not losing their paycheck that they get every 2 weeks. So who's going to pay the rent for the entrepreneur who can't pay his restaurant space, and the workers who can't pay their apartment rent?
Well, they certainly do. And I want to point out to you that the newly elected president of the county council, Tom Hucker, pointed out at the Montgomery County's annual legislative breakfast that the county has passed 35 bills providing $255 million for relief within the county, of which $76 million goes to small businesses, $22 million for rental assistance, $10 million for childcare, and another $10 million for food assistance. That's a lot of money. That's 118 out of $255 million has gone to support small businesses, restaurants, and their employees, and it's desperately needed. He also pointed out that the governor has funds in our emergency rainy day fund that could be released to further do that. And I think that needs to be done as well, and Congress passing the CARES Act or the Relief Act right now.